Okay. Sorry for the extra seconds. It says it's setting it up. Okay, looks like we're in the go. Okay. So what to expect during the unexpected? Right now is an unprecedented time. And I just heard that we just got new orders, potentially from Gavin Newsom, that we may be going back into a shelter at home or stay at home order. So these are all unexpected times. And it's really drastically changed how we live our lives. So what we want to do is manage that in a way of trying to understand that we are really doing the best we can and starting to reframe our focus and our views on this. Because parents, you are doing the best that you can, juggling financial stress, juggling health concerns, and all at once. You're told that your kids are going home all overnight, and now you're helping with the being teachers, and your kids are using their homes as classrooms as you may be trying to work and manage that. So with all of this added stress, we need to adjust our expectations. So the first part of this is really talking about that, because while our students back before COVID may have been A and B students, now they're barely C students. Again, that might be the best that they can do, because these are really unprecedented times that are incredibly stressful. And all of us, from our kids to us, are doing the best that we can. So what is a realistic expectation? And the answer is, it depends. It depends on your living situation. It depends on your family situation, and it depends on your student, and it depends on you. It may be very different for a family who have both parents there and they only have one kid, versus having multiple children that all are managing distance learning, versus having multiple parents who are working and staggering those schedules, or having a single parent who's trying to manage all of this. If you have your student may be very different. Your student may be flourishing right now in distance learning. And I have seen some kids that this is their jam. This is where they're doing so much better. But for a lot of our kids, that's not the way. They're feeling very isolated, and they're, sitting in front of a computer for 8 hours or 2 hours it's just too much for them. So again, all of those expectations, what you have as for an expectation, there's no cookie cutter for that. It all changes. So I'm a huge Dolly Parton fan. I love Dolly Parton. And when I found this meme, I completely added it, because I thought that this is me being a working parent completely mimics my day, right? I'm working 9 to 9:10, 9:45 to 10, 10:20 to 10:35. I'm up and down. I'm doing different hats. So when we're parents, we're managing that. And again, our expectations for what our days look like, it's not just sitting at a desk for the majority of the day. It's all over the place, and we're all managing that. So when we're setting our expectations, you want to ask yourself, is the expectation achievable? Is this something that I can do and that I can reach? Is it something that I can support my child with? If we're looking at expectations of things that would happen during their school day. So for example, a child that maybe isn't going from class to class to class. And we have an expectation that they, go from one class to the next class to the next class. But if we're not there to support that, then how are you going to be able to support it? So again, you have to think about, well, now what do I need? And so if I can't do it, what resources do I need to tap into? Do I need to be contacting my sites? Do I need to be working with my counseling team and my student support team? And I think the biggest question that we need to be asking ourselves right now is, can we meet this without a lot of added stress? Let's say that your child, because attendance is such a big issue right now for so many of our kids. We have so many that just aren't engaging, or they're not showing up. And let's say that they're doing that 20% of the time, and we want them to do it 100% of the time. Well, it may just be too much to get them to do that tomorrow, right? Like that's just too much stress. So we say tomorrow, just do a little bit more than what you did today. And then the next day, do a little bit more, because that journey to that expectation is just that. It's a journey, and we're going to take it, and it's going to be bumpy, but we're going to take it one step at a time. And remember that we're doing the best that we can. There's a quote that I say that goes into some of my other presentations, but I add it on here because I think it's relevant. And that is that a failure isn't always a mistake. It's the best that we can do under these circumstances. In fact, Dee, I think you were there for our last presentation of that. So that really, when we're talking about expectations, failures aren't failures. They're not mistakes. They're not accidents. They're just the things that we could do that was the best that we could do at that time. And I think for when we're reframing our expectations, it's really a time for us to take stock of what's valuable, what are our priorities, and how do we achieve those. So our reasonable expectations need to be things that can help set your child up for success. We don't want to set them up for failure. We want to create very reasonable, small goals and expectations that they can easily achieve, or that they're already achieving right now. Maybe we just want them to do it a little bit more. Also, with these expectations, they shouldn't be adding more stress. We want them to help reduce stress and conflict. And finally, improve self-confidence. Our kids are really struggling. And a lot of our kids are struggling with depression and feeling isolated and having anxiety around meeting goals. So we don't want to add to that, right? We want to make sure that we're setting up expectations as a tool to help them achieve and build their self-confidence. Okay, so I'm going to take a break here and see if you guys have any comments or questions that you'd like to talk about around setting those expectations. And fellow BCBAs, feel free to add in anything. Nope. All right. T says no comments or questions. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and keep going. So making a schedule, establishing routines and schedules. Children can definitely thrive on routine, and children learn best from repetition. Consistent routines and schedules lead to more positive behaviors and help reduce some of those challenging behaviors. Last time when we met, we talked about that. How do we reduce challenging how do we reduce challenging behaviors in the home, or how do we manage that? And setting up some clear schedules, some clear routines will help those kids build on that. And over time, once they're in those routines, it starts to reduce some of those battles that might happen. The other thing that's not listed here that I do want to talk about is having those clear routines and expectations can lead to independence for your child, and even a kindergartner, right? So even a kindergartner can build up independence when that routine over and over as they're doing it day in and day out. So when you are doing this, you want to make sure you're considering your child's needs. Does your child need help getting started? When is your child ready to learn? Are you building time in your schedule for exercise? I think that that's really important. We did this, Alejandra and I did this presentation last night for another class, for a school and their coffee hours. And I don't know, Alejandra, if you had it in your group, but in my group, the parents were talking about how their kids are just, they're sitting on their computers so much for class, and then they're sitting on their computer for their downtime too. So it feels like all day they're on their computer, and that's now starting to interrupt their sleep. It's making it more difficult for them to get up. So we talked a lot about that, and a lot of the parents shared about how exercise and just building that time in, like it was easier when it was summer and warmer, and they were actually building in some time to go outside. And now they're like, oh, you know, what to do with our kids now that they're inside. So some of the parents talked about looking at YouTube videos like Go Noodle, or someone also mentioned about some of the fitness programs, like I think Diamond Dallas Dave is doing all of his yoga that's free for kids. So things like that. So building those into your systems and into your daily routine, because just getting them up and moving can help so much with relieving a lot of energy and anxiety and help them feel better. Do you guys have any comments or anything else that you want to add to that?
The only thing I think as far as another type of activity that you could possibly incorporate would be like doing a scavenger hunt or something like that. Just that is still kind of incorporating some type of academic type stuff, but then also engaging in that just movement. And I think what that kind of ties back to the expectations as well. So kind of having a little more flexibility in our expectations as far as what attending or a student that's engaged looks like. So maybe, we're a little bit more flexible in that we're not expecting them to sit there for an hour straight without any movement whatsoever. As long as they are attending, it's okay for them to be a little jittery, or, maybe having them just stand up and walk around for a little bit to just get some of that, kind of some of those jitters out.
And it was similar, right? Right now it's colder. It's going to start raining. The days are shorter, so it's not as easy to go outside and play for a little bit. So we talked about, yes, YouTube has a wealth of resources, which is great. But I know also, like, if you have Amazon, which a lot of us have Amazon, on Amazon Prime Video, there's free workout videos on there too. So there's good resources. We just have to get a little creative. And we even talked about putting on some music and dancing. And even if your kids don't dance, at least you'll have a good laugh. Because I remember my mom would do that. She'd put on music and dance, and we wouldn't, but it was a fun kind of time where it's like, okay, it's breaking up the day. It's breaking up kind of the monotony of computer. So those were some of the ideas that we talked around.
Yeah, I think all of those are great. The other thing that we talked about, and Edgar, you brought this up with, like, sitting, not having them be able to get their jitters out, was like just drawing a box around their kind of space and saying you can move however you want as long as you stay in this box. So then that way they're getting up and they're moving and they're walking around, but they're still being able to kind of be in class. So, and I think that goes back again to the expectations and systems and house rules that you're putting in place, right? We're setting up this rule, like if you're in distance learning, you have to be in this space and you have to have your stuff with you, but you can move around and you can do all of that. Or, hey, if you need to take a break, you can take a break anytime in the house, you just need to ask. So that could be something else that they would then incorporate when they're in distance learning. You can take a break, just ask your teacher first. You also want to consider your needs when you're setting these things up. So when can you help? When can you not help? If you're not there during the day, you may not be able to help during very much, right? When they're there, because you're not there. So a lot of your help is going to be outside of that time. So how are you going to do that? And that could be making sure that you're practicing it with them. You're setting everything up for them. If it's things like, looking at what you need for space, maybe you need to kind of reconfigure things, make sure that they have all of their supplies with them. I've encouraged parents, if they have backpacks and they're not using them, to use them again, so that way all their school supplies are right there and they're not having to look for it. And then technology. If your kids are having a hard time figuring out Zoom and Class Dojo and I don't know, whatever else, Peach Jar and all those other different types of programs that are kind of everywhere. And sometimes if your kid has multiple classrooms, it may be Google Meets for one class and Zoom for another. And if your kid is having a hard time with that and you don't know how to manage that, you may want to take a chance to learn that. And I know a lot of sites are offering support for families. Our IT department is helping with that. And again, taking that time, if you're not able to do it with them in the class, and maybe that's not even the best time because it's kind of a stressful time, taking time outside of the class to work through that, to make sure that they can do that and they can do that independently. And how to make it work for learning, you want to make sure that you're establishing that consistent morning routine. We talked a lot about that, that was so important, that kind of they don't start their day off like the whole day goes off. And like, again, sleep was a big topic of that. Their sleep is getting impaired and they're either not going to bed on time, and even staff. And I just got out of a meeting earlier where the principal was like, my toddler still doesn't even go to sleep on time. So I think that knowing that sleep is a big thing for our kids, and it's really tough. And then that's making them more groggy, tired in the morning. And how do we manage that? So again, you may need to kind of readjust your morning routines. You may need to allow some time. You may need to build an exercise during that morning routine to get them awake. And then find a learning space that when they go to this, it sets a signal that this is what we're learning. even if it's in their bedrooms, right? So we don't want them to be working on their bed. That might be, again, and sending some signals that bed isn't just for sleep, but having them have a space in their bedroom that they do it, whether it's on the floor or at the foot of the bed or somewhere else. I even had one parent say that she set up the closet so that the kids could go there and have some quiet space because it's just so chaotic. And, you know, we have to be creative, and in that also figuring out how we're reducing the distractions for our kids. A lot of our sites are offering, have purchased headphones and headsets for our kids. And that's been helpful because if you have 3 different kids on distance learning, I know even just for my daughter and I, we're in competing meetings. So being able to have headsets is really important. Yes. Do you guys have any questions or comments about that? Oh, it looks like Dee says your teenager does much better when somebody sits with him while he tackles his assignments, but not always feasible. I feel like I'm back in school. Yes. Yeah. My student's quite physical, so I do not limit this and allow him to decide how he wants to express his energy as long as he's safe. Yeah, I think that's great. And I think the other thing, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. And that's where it's going to vary, right? By student and by student's needs. Okay, so he needs a lot more of that physical movement and activity. So yes, he can have that again, so long as he's safe. And a student who might need a little bit less, then okay, we can keep it a little bit more confined and you can have this kind of smaller space. So it's going to be tailored to your student's needs. And the one from yesterday, we also talked about like getting ready for school, even though you're not leaving, to avoid you wake out of bed and you roll and you turn on your computer, but you know, just washing your face and maybe changing your shirt. You're not going to put on a full like socks, shoes, and the whole thing, but just doing those things will get you ready, just as if you were going to class. I find myself, even from working from home, when I do that, like I get myself ready for work, it's just a lot more productive and you set the tone for the day. So things like that help. Obviously not every day is like that because sometimes you can't, but the more you do it, the better.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that because I forgot that we talked about that too. Like having them get ready, having them do the routine that they would normally do for school. So get up, wash your face, brush your teeth, have breakfast, get dressed. Even if you're just staying there, just that process gets you ready. And then going back to having your teacher, he does better when somebody sits with him and he doesn't. I think that is going to go back to when can you help him and when can you not, and starting to be strategic. You know, if it's a non-preferred class, and I bring math up because I think math is a non-preferred class for a lot of us. My husband would take aim for that, but he's a unicorn. So everybody else, I think math is tough, right? And so if that's something that's tough for him, we may want to make sure that we're scheduling in like, okay, for this class, somebody's going to be with you and somebody's going to be doing this, and making sure those check-ins are kind of planned, because I think when that's there, when we're not there, that kind of gives the kids, oh, I'm going to be okay when someone's not here because I know the check-in is coming. And so it gives them some structure and support. And again, if they're motivated to be there, then they may not need as much support for that. The other thing too is working with your sites, working with your teachers, letting them know this and say, you know, are there things that we need to be setting up for this student to help them be more successful? And maybe they need some additional assistance with that and some more tailored supports that are being set up. And I know that our teachers are doing, you know, this is tough for them too, but a lot of them are really willing and wanting to help out as much as they can to help with the kids. So I would encourage that. So when you set a school day schedule, make sure that you keep it as close to a normal schedule as possible. I think that goes back to that washing your face, setting things up. So it is very different. That also kind of makes it different when you're on the weekend, right? Because then it's different. I can sleep in more. I can stay in my jammies more. And those weekend days are definitely much more rest days. And then creating blocks of times for specific activities. This was really set up. So I've noticed in distance learning, some classrooms, like my daughter, her day is scheduled and she's on Zoom from 8 a.m. in the morning to 4 p.m. in the afternoon. Solid, right? So that's 8 hours that she's on Zoom, minus lunch. But for other classes and other teachers, they're, maybe Monday, Wednesday, Friday are times that they are pretty Zoom heavy, and the other times are independent learning days. And when those types of things are happening, how can we have a schedule set up for that? How can we mimic that? And then also consider using a timer to signal the start and end of activities, especially for those times when they're more independent. It's nice to have that timer because then it kind of signals, like, again, they know that there's going to be an end that's coming, and that either whether they're coming from I'm going to work on this and I'm going to keep doing this because I know at some point I get to take a break, or vice versa. I'm scheduling a break, but when the timer goes off, then I need to go back, and being able to set that up for them. Additional considerations, build in activities. Oh, yes. Yes, it looks like you are using the timer, and I'm a big timer proponent. I use it a lot. Building in activities that your children can do on their own, building in the independence, building them up for success, planning times when you can have some time for yourself. I go back to the oxygen mask example, that when the oxygen masks come down, if you don't have your own mask on, you can't put the oxygen mask on your child. You can't support them. So in order to be able to support your child, you need to be able to take care of yourself and support yourself so that you can take care of your kids. You want to make sure when you're if you can schedule times to go outside and be physically active. So we talked a lot about this already, and it is getting colder. So again, trying to find, maybe being more creative with that, with setting up those spontaneous dance activities. And that movement can help focus, getting kids, help the kids focus and get back on track. You may want to consider incorporating some walks, indoor exercises, and then like Edgar and Alejandra said, doing some fun activities like the dance parties, scavenger hunts, all of that. All right. And then learn from the world around you. Use your environment to build in activities. Have your child read, go for a walk, create art. Have your child come up with their own activities too. Have them be a part of building in the schedules. And you want to set aside some quiet time. Predictable downtimes are important for all children, and there are plenty of mindfulness apps and activities are available. I think Headspace, which is an app that I use for mindfulness, is free to anyone who's impacted by COVID. So that's something that you could look at. And in consider incorporating videos or podcasts or other media you can consume as a family. So any thoughts about that? Oh, okay. You want to set aside some scheduled meal and snack times. Make sure that those could be kind of naturally during natural transitions, allow for downtime. It can prevent sluggishness from snacking all day. Some of our kids, I have one little kiddo, and he keeps going and running to the kitchen and getting snacks and getting Pepsis, and then he's having to run to the bathroom because he's eating and drinking all the time. So setting up some clear snack times can help with that. And it also just provides a break to look forward to. Again, like, once I'm done with this, I get to go do this. And again, depending on where you're at, I mean, my daughter has, I think, 10 minutes between her classes. So I know some students have as much as 30 minutes between classes. Some students have as little as 5 minutes between classes. Some students have literally zero time. They just go from class to class. So you're going to set these up kind of based on your child's needs and also their school schedule. And once you can get a routine you can stick to, you want to make sure it's as consistent as possible. And this is the thing, this is a trick. You're going to have to figure it out. You're going to come up with a routine and it may not work. The routine that you come up with, it doesn't have to be a specific routine. You don't have to do certain things. It just has to work, and it has to be something that you can do every day. If you can do it every day, that's the routine that works for you. Involve your child in making this, especially if your kid is in middle school or high school. A control is a great motivator, and being able to be independent is a great motivator. So have them be a part of that. Have them be incorporated in the process, and then post it so that everybody knows what the schedule is. Have it, my daughter is on the tablet so much that we now have a family shared calendar that has everything out there. So she's getting those alerts, and we're all on board. And if you fall off, don't worry, try your best, reset, and try again. and write it down, write it down, write it down. Don't just talk about something that you're going to do and then don't write it down. If you're going to change the schedule and you think, oh, let's try this, write it down and then really try it. Give it a couple days and see if it works. Lastly, I know that we're starting to run out of time. We want to make sure that we're looking at different types of schedules. So for older children, there's two different kinds of schedules that you could look at. One is a time-based schedule. And so for this, you want to make sure that the kids can read time and they can read and write, and they can be independent with some structure. Another type of schedule is a to-do list. This is, again, something for kids that may be a bit more independent and may actually function a little bit better on less structure, where they have a to-do list and they can prioritize it and kind of figure it out on their own. And you could also do a hybrid. So this is a time-based schedule. And again, it doesn't have to be fancy. It just has to work. It can be super low tech, such as just writing it down on some paper. From 9 to 10, we're going to do this. From 10 to 11, we're going to do this. You could also, say from 10 to 11, it's going, or if we're doing outside from 1 to 2, you could then say, but here is your to-do list. You have to do jumping jacks. You need to run across the yard. We need to have a dance party, whatever. So in those times, you can also build in some to-do list. For our more technology savvy kids, or where technology is better for them, you could also just look at setting up their Google Classroom calendars. Here's some other options of to-do lists where it's just some bullet points. All right, for our younger kids, we can do a first then. So again, we're just breaking it up. So first you're going to do this, then you're going to do this. They don't need to read, and it's just very basic. So it's not overwhelming. It's just that first this happens, then this happens. First we do Zoom, then we're going to take a break. First we're going to have breakfast, then we're going to get dressed. Very, very basic. Once, if that's too basic for your kids, we can do some picture-based schedules. Again, just take some pictures. It doesn't have to be high tech. You can just kind of take some pictures, print them out, and then put them out. So then that way they can, it can be organized on how they do that, right? And we could have 2 to 3 activities at a time. So here's some examples of a first then schedule. So first wash your hands, eat at a table. And then here's some examples of some picture schedules. You can also start setting up the picture schedules with some text, and then even setting up kind of like a to-do list or with time, so we can start getting them into those different types of schedules. This is an example of a schedule that you might see in an elementary school classroom. So these might be nice if you're creative and you can do this, because then that's something that's very similar to what they would see when they go back to school. For schedules, especially for picture schedules, Khan Academy has a bunch of different schedules that are free and you can download. Teacher Pay Teachers have a bunch of free and paid schedules that you can get. The paid ones tend to be things that you can customize a little bit more, or may have more pictures that you might be able to use. Maybe they're not exact pictures, but they would be cartoon pictures. Easter Seals is another one that has a bunch of schedules that are free and able to download. So in a recap, make sure that you are considering your needs when you're setting a school day schedule, and you're considering the needs of your student, and you're considering the needs of your family, right? Especially if you have multiple learners. Schedule times to go outside and or to get some exercise. Learn from the world around you and build in those opportunities. Make sure you're setting aside some quiet time, set scheduled times for meals, and plan a routine that you can stick to. All right. That's it. I'm going to go ahead and